Hey everyone, welcome back. We're all looking ahead to this upcoming college football season. And, there's one name that seems to be on everyone's mind.
Kaidon Salter.
Kaidon Salter,
Oh,
Colorado's new quarterback.
he's certainly generating a lot of buzz.
Yes, some folks are already calling him a Heisman contender and others
Aren't so sure.
not so sure at all.
Yeah, there's a lot of I'd say a mix of anticipation and skepticism around Salter right now.
Yeah, we've been seeing all these articles, some hyping him up based on his stats from Liberty.
Mhm.
And there's even some early NFL draft predictions floating around out there. But
On the other hand, you've got these pieces that are questioning, can he really cut it at this level? Can he handle the pressure of a Power 5 program? That's
exactly.
a really interesting dynamic.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we're going to dig into today in this deep dive.
We're going to sift through all the noise, figure out what's really going on with Salter, and hopefully by the end of this, you'll have a much better idea of whether he's someone worth keeping an eye on this season.
Yeah, so right off the bat, one thing that jumps out at me is his journey to get to this point.
It's a little unconventional, to say the least.
Yeah, high school star signs with Tennessee, then transfers to Liberty before ever playing a down for the Volunteers.
And now he's landed at Colorado with Coach Prime. That's a lot of movement for a young quarterback.
Yeah, it is, and it makes you wonder, what's the full story there? The articles mention some off-field issues at Tennessee, but the details are,
Pretty scarce.
yeah, very vague.
Yeah, so it seems like Liberty was his chance to kind of reset and prove himself. Yeah, really show what he could do on the field.
And he definitely did that.
Oh, he did.
I mean, 5,889 passing yards, 2,006 rushing yards, and a combined 77 touchdowns.
Those are some serious numbers. I mean, that puts him in the conversation with some of the top dual-threat quarterbacks we've seen in college football.
I mean, those stats are impressive, I'm not going to lie.
Oh, they really are.
But that was at Liberty.
Right.
Smaller program. Does that kind of production automatically translate to success in the Power 5?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, we've seen plenty of guys light it up at smaller schools and then kind of fizzle out when they face tougher competition.
So how do we figure out which category Salter falls into?
Well, that's where I think the Deion factor comes into play.
Coach Prime.
Coach Prime, exactly. Deion Sanders has brought a whole new level of attention and honestly, a whole new level of expectation to Colorado.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword.
Absolutely. On the one hand, you have more eyes on you, a bigger stage, the chance to really shine under the brightest lights.
But the pressure is immense.
Oh, yeah, the
Ugh.
expectations are sky high now. Can Salter handle that pressure? That's a big question mark.
And then you've got the changes to the receiving corps at Colorado. They lost some pretty key players to the NFL draft.
Oh, yeah.
So Salter's going to be working with a relatively inexperienced group of receivers.
That lack of established chemistry could be a real challenge for him, especially early in the season.
Yeah, but maybe that's an opportunity in disguise.
Oh, how so?
Well, if Salter can come in and elevate the play of these young receivers, show that he's not just reliant on having star talent around him, that could say a lot about his leadership and his ability to make everyone around him better.
I see what you're saying. It forces him to really step up and take ownership and prove that he's not just a product of the system he was in at Liberty.
Right, exactly.
It'll be fascinating to see how he approaches that challenge, for sure.
All right, so let's talk about the Heisman Trophy.
The elephant in the room.
Some people are already throwing Salter's name into the mix, even though he's moving to a much tougher conference.
It's a little premature, don't you think?
Is it just hype, or does he actually have a legitimate shot?
Well, the Heisman conversation often revolves around narratives as much as it does about pure stats. And
Salter's got a pretty good narrative.
he does. He's got that redemption arc, the transfer story, the arrival at a program that's buzzing with energy because of Coach Prime.
It's a good story.
That kind of stuff captures the imagination of voters.
And you can't deny the raw talent.
No, absolutely not.
We already talked about his stats, but, he's got that dual threat ability that's become almost essential for Heisman contenders lately,
Yeah, like Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, those guys who can hurt you with their arm and their legs.
Right, exactly. Those are the kind of players that tend to win the Heisman these days.
But on the flip side,
There's always a flip side.
we also have to remember that Heisman voters, historically speaking, have shown a clear bias toward Power 5 schools.
True.
Those conferences outside the Power 5, like the American Athletic Conference or the Mountain West where Liberty played.
Yeah, they just haven't had the same level of representation when it comes to the Heisman.
So even though Salter put up these incredible numbers at Liberty, He's going to have to prove he can do it against the top-tier defenses in the Pac-12.
And he's facing some stiff competition.
Oh, absolutely.
You've got Nussmeier at LSU, who's coming off a breakout season, and then there's the Manning factor. Yeah, he's coming in with a level of hype we haven't seen in a long time.
Salter's going to have to be truly exceptional to even be in the conversation with those guys.
So it's a tough road ahead, but here's where things get a little interesting.
Right. I'm listening.
One article pointed out that Salter actually have better Heisman odds than any other quarterback coming from the group of five, even with the move to Colorado.
Really?
Yeah. So what did that tell you?
Well, it tells me that odds makers see something special in this kid. They recognize that talent can transcend conferences, and it also speaks to the potential impact of playing under Coach Prime.
Right. Deion Sanders brings a certain star power and media attention that could really amplify Salter's success if he performs well.
No doubt about it.
So we've got this really interesting mix here. We've got proven production, raw talent, a new high-profile platform.
And the inherent challenges of adapting to a much tougher conference and facing some of the best competition in the country.
It's a lot to unpack.
It is, but there's one more piece of the puzzle that we haven't really touched on yet. Salter the person.
Right. We've talked a lot about the stats and the hype. But what about his character, his leadership? Those qualities are just as important for success at this level.
Maybe even more important.
And that's what we're going to dive into next.
That's kind of the tricky part. You know, most of what we've been looking at is about his performance on the field, those stats, and the whole transfer situation.
Yeah. There's not a lot out there about Salter as a person. Like, what kind of leader is he, or how does he handle adversity?
It's true, we get these glimpses of his talent and how resilient he is, but there's still a lot of unanswered questions.
And, you know, when you're talking about the quarterback position, especially in a high-pressure environment like Colorado,
Oh, yeah.
those intangible qualities are just as important as arm strength or speed.
Couldn't agree more. You know, we know there were some issues off the field at Tennessee.
Right.
But the details are really vague. I mean, did he make mistakes? Sure. But did he learn from them? Has he matured as a person?
That's what we don't know.
Those are the questions that'll really determine his ceiling.
Not just as a player, but as a young man.
Exactly.
You know, it reminds me of this quarterback from a few years back. Came into college with so much hype, you know, amazing talent, broke all kinds of records in high school.
Yeah, I think I know who you're talking about.
But he just couldn't handle the pressure, the scrutiny, the sudden fame.
It all got to him.
Yeah, he made some bad decisions off the field, and his career never really recovered.
It's a shame, you know? So much potential just wasted.
It's a reminder that talent alone isn't enough.
It's a classic case of what could have been. And I think that's why Salter's story is so fascinating right now, you know? We're all kind of waiting to see which path he'll choose.
Will he rise to the occasion, or will he crumble under the pressure?
It's high-stakes drama unfolding in real time.
Let's go back to the Heisman race for a minute. You mentioned that bias toward Power 5 schools.
It's always there.
But even if we forget about that for a second, what would it take for Salter to actually win the Heisman? This is a guy who's never even played a snap in a Power 5 conference.
He'd need to have a season for the ages. I mean, I'm not just talking about big numbers. He'd need to lead Colorado to a level of success that they haven't seen in years.
Like contend for a Pac-12 championship.
At least. Think Lamar Jackson level production, you know. Single-handedly carrying his team to victory week after week.
Game numbers.
Exactly. And even then, it might not be enough. He'd have to do it with a certain style, a certain swagger that captures the voters' attention and makes them believe he's truly special.
So it's not just about the stats, it's about the narrative. He needs to become the story, the guy everyone's talking about.
It's a tall order.
Especially with the competition he's up against.
You said it. You've got Nussmeier at LSU, who's already proven himself on the big stage, and then there's the Manning factor, you know. Arch Manning comes with this legacy, this aura of inevitability that's just hard to compete with.
Like he was destined for greatness from the moment he was born.
Pretty much.
But you know what? Salter's got something those other guys don't.
What's that?
He's got a chip on his shoulder. He's got something to prove, you know. He's not the chosen one, the golden boy. He's had to fight for everything he's earned.
Yeah, that hunger, that drive to silence the doubters, it can be a powerful motivator.
It can push you to do things you never thought possible.
And if Salter can harness that motivation and combine it with his talent and the platform he has now at Colorado,
who knows what he can achieve?
The sky's the limit.
So, okay, we've got this incredibly talented but kind of mysterious quarterback stepping into a high-pressure situation with a ton of unknowns.
It's a recipe for a compelling season, that's for sure.
We've talked about the stats, the hype, the Heisman race, all the angles.
Even delved a little into the psychology of it all.
But for you, the listener, what stands out the most about Kaidon Salter's story? Was it the raw talent, the unconventional journey? Or maybe it's the Deion factor that really grabs you?
It's just so interesting to think about how this young quarterback is going to develop under Coach Prime.
Right. I mean, Deion is one of the most charismatic and, some might even say polarizing figures in all of sports.
Oh, absolutely.
I think for me, what really stands out is this clash between his potential and all the uncertainty surrounding him.
It's like we see these flashes of brilliance, the stats from Liberty, those highlight reel plays, but then there's this cloud of unanswered questions hanging over everything.
Exactly, like how much of his success at Liberty was because of the system he was in,
right,
versus, his own individual talent.
And can he thrive under that intense scrutiny and pressure that comes with playing for Coach Prime at a program like Colorado?
It's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out.
No doubt. Those are the questions that are really going to define his story this season.
Something else I'm curious about is how Salter's playing style is going to mesh with Coach Prime's offensive philosophy.
Oh, yeah. Good point.
Deion is known for that aggressive, high-flying style of offense.
Yeah. Can Salter adapt and excel in that system, or will there be a learning curve?
Will there be some growing pains?
We haven't even talked about the X's and O's yet,
Yeah.
Does Salter have the arm strength to make all the throws Coach Prime is going to ask him to make? Can he make quick decisions under pressure? And how will his mobility fit into the scheme?
So many questions.
These are all questions that are going to be answered on the field, not in the stat sheets or the articles,
That's what makes it so exciting.
It really does.
We're not just watching a player develop. We're watching a story unfold week after week.
And that's what we love about sports, isn't it?
It's that unpredictability, the human drama, the triumphs and the setbacks.
The moments that make you jump out of your seat.
Exactly.
And let's be real, a part of us wants to see him succeed, right?
Of course.
We love those redemption stories, athletes overcoming adversity to achieve greatness.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
it's a takeaway for the listeners out there.
What should they be paying attention to as they follow Salter's journey this season?
Don't get caught up in all the hype or the skepticism. Just watch the games with an open mind, Pay attention to how he handles the pressure, how he interacts with his teammates, how he responds when things don't go his way.
I think that's great advice. The answers are going to reveal themselves over time.
They always do.
And for everyone listening out there, we want to hear from you. What are your expectations for Kaidon Salter this season? Do you think he's the real deal, or is this all just hype? Let us know in the comments. Because as we've learned today, there's a lot more to his story than meets the eye. And the most exciting chapters are still being written.